In the 13th century, two worlds, separated by thousands of miles, were set on a collision course. From the vast, wind-swept plains of Mongolia rode an army unlike any the West had ever imagined, swift, merciless, and terrifyingly disciplined. From the stone castles and grand cathedrals of Europe came the armored knights, proud warriors bound by honor, faith, and heavy steel. When these two forces finally met, it wasn't just a battle. It was a clash of civilizations that would shake the very foundations of the medieval world. Our story begins in the east, among the endless grasslands where the horizon stretches into infinity. Here, a man named Temujin, who would become known as Genghis Khan, forged scattered nomadic tribes into the most formidable military machine the world had ever seen. By the time of his death in 1227, the Mongol Empire was a colossal entity, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. But the conquests were far from over. His successors, led by his grandson Batu Khan and the legendary general Subutai, turned their gaze westward, toward the rich, fragmented kingdoms of Europe. Meanwhile, in Europe, power was a tapestry woven by feudal lords, kings, and the church. The knight was their ultimate champion, a living symbol of Christian faith and martial courage. Encased in shining plate armor, mounted on powerful war horses, and guided by codes of chivalry, these warriors believed themselves to be invincible. Their world was one of towering castles, fluttering banners, and the pursuit of glory in noble combat. But against the Mongols, glory would come at a horrifying price. The two fighting styles could not have been more different. European knights specialized in the heavy cavalry charge, a thunderous, earth-shaking advance designed to shatter enemy lines through sheer force and weight. It was a strategy built on brute strength and individual heroism. The Mongols, however, fought like a pack of wolves. Their warfare was a symphony of speed, coordination, and deception. Every warrior was a master horseman and carried a devastating weapon, the composite bow. Made of laminated horn, wood, and sinew, it was powerful enough to pierce armor from hundreds of meters away. They moved as a single, fluid body, obeying complex commands relayed by drums, horns, and signal flags across the battlefield. Their signature tactic was the feigned retreat. They would pretend to flee, luring their overconfident enemies into a reckless chase across open ground. Then, just as the pursuers became exhausted and disorganized, the Mongols would turn, surround them in a deadly crescent formation, and annihilate them in a storm of arrows. Speed, coordination, and deception. These were their weapons, as lethal as any sword. The first major clash came in 1223, on the banks of the Kalka River in modern-day Ukraine. A coalition of Kievan Rus's princes and their Cuman allies gathered their forces, confident in their numerical superiority and the strength of their armored knights. But the Mongols, led by Subutai and Jebe, were not there to fight a conventional battle. They were there to hunt. For 9 long days, the Mongols staged a masterful feigned retreat, drawing the Russes and Cuman knights deeper and deeper into the steppe. The knights, eager for glory, pursued them relentlessly, their formations stretching out and breaking apart. Finally, with their enemy exhausted and disorganized, the Mongols sprang their trap. They turned, encircled the fragmented European forces, and unleashed hell. The battle became a one-sided slaughter. The coalition was utterly crushed. In a chilling display of psychological warfare, the captured princes were bound, placed beneath a large wooden platform, and slowly crushed to death as the Mongol generals feasted above them. It was a brutal message to the West: resistance is futile. News of the disaster at Kalka River trickled back to Europe, but it was met mostly with disbelief. The stories sounded like fantasy. How could an army of so-called barbarian nomads defeat the armored champions of Christendom? Surely the reports were exaggerated. This arrogance would cost them dearly. 2 decades later, the real storm arrived. In 1241, Batu Khan and Subutai returned, this time not for a raid, but for a full-scale invasion. At their command was an army of over 100,000 warriors, divided into multiple columns to strike with maximum shock and awe. Their targets were Poland and Hungary, the gateways to Western Europe. The knights of Christendom gathered once more, Teutonic knights in their white mantles, Polish nobles with their proud banners, Hungarian soldiers, and elite warriors from the Knights Templar. They prayed to God for victory, but prayer alone could not save them. In Poland, a Mongol detachment led by Bajdar and Kadan met a European army near the town of Legnica. The army was led by Duke Henry II, the Pious of Silesia. It was a classic confrontation. The European knights formed up for their devastating charge, lances lowered, banners flying, the ground shaking with the thunder of their hooves. But the Mongols refused to meet them head-on. As the knights charged, the Mongol light cavalry scattered, peppering the charging knights with arrows. Smoke pots were used to obscure the battlefield, sowing confusion and chaos. The knights, their charge broken and their momentum lost, were lured into a disorganized pursuit. Once again, it was a trap. The Mongol wings closed in, encircling the entire army and slaughtering them almost to the last man. Duke Henry was killed, and his severed head was paraded on a spear as a trophy. With its army destroyed, Poland lay defenseless. While Poland burned, the main Mongol force under Batu and Subutai converged on Hungary. King Bela IV had assembled a vast army of knights, infantry, and foreign mercenaries. He made his stand at the Sajo River, near Mohi, feeling secure behind the river and a fortified wagon camp. He underestimated Subutai's genius. Under the cover of darkness, Subutai took a large portion of the army on a long, flanking march, secretly building a pontoon bridge to cross the river downstream. At dawn, Batu launched a frontal assault on the main bridge, pinning the Hungarian forces. The Hungarians fought bravely, holding the bridge for hours. But just as they believed they were winning, Subutai's force appeared from the rear, completely surrounding their camp. Panic erupted. Trapped between two Mongol forces, the Hungarian army disintegrated. Thousands were cut down as they tried to flee through a gap the Mongols had deliberately left open, a gap that turned into a deadly, miles-long killing field. In a single day, the flower of Hungarian nobility was wiped out. After the cataclysmic victory at Mohi, nothing stood between the Mongols and the heart of Europe. Vienna, Prague, even Rome itself all lay open to the unstoppable horde. Europe held its breath, expecting the end. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the Mongols vanished. In the winter of 1242, word reached Batu Khan from the distant capital of Karakorum. The great Khan Ogaday was dead. According to Mongol law, all princes of the bloodline had to return to the heartland to elect a new ruler. The invasion was called off. Europe was spared, not by the strength of its armies, but by a stroke of pure chance. The Mongols withdrew, but their shadow lingered over Europe for generations. The age of the invincible, heavily armored knight was over. The shock of Legnica and Mohi forced European rulers and military thinkers to reassess everything they knew about warfare. They began to study the Mongols, their terrifying mobility, their sophisticated intelligence networks, their combined arms tactics. In the centuries that followed, European armies gradually became lighter, faster, and more disciplined. The focus shifted from the individual charge to coordinated unit tactics. Castles were strengthened with new designs to withstand siege, and the importance of ranged weaponry like the longbow grew exponentially. The lessons of the steppe, learned in blood and fire, would profoundly shape the future of Western warfare. The clash between the knight and the Mongol was more than a series of battles. It was a brutal, transformative encounter between two different philosophies of war and life. It was a stark reminder that no empire, no warrior, and no civilization, no matter how mighty, is immune to the relentless tide of history. Thanks for watching. If you found this clash of civilizations fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most epic conflicts. Let me know in the comments which historical matchup you'd like to see next.